My name is Andy. Before I tell you what happened that night, I want to say up front, I'm not someone who believes in this stuff. I work in finance. Every day it's just numbers, reports, deadlines. I'm the kind of person who believes everything has an explanation. But after that night, I'm not so sure everything does. This happened about 8 months ago in the office building where I work. The building's pretty old, built around 30 years back, in an area that, according to some of the older employees, used to be a cemetery before it got turned into an office district. I never really thought much about that story. To me, it was just small talk over lunch in the break room. The building has 20 floors. My office is on the 13th floor. Yeah, I know, 13. People love making that number spooky. But to me back then, 13 was just a floor number, nothing more. That night I was working late, alone. I had a financial report due before 8 the next morning because my boss needed it ahead of a board meeting. Everyone else had already left by 6. The cleaning staff finished up and left around 10. So from 10 o'clock on, it was basically just me on the 13th floor, maybe in the whole building. I wasn't scared at the time. I'd worked late alone in that same building before. All I felt was tired and ready to go home. I finished right at midnight. I remember it clearly because I glanced at the clock in the corner of my screen and it read 12:00, exactly midnight. I shut down my computer, packed my laptop into my bag, turned off the office lights, and walked toward the elevator. There were 2 elevators on the 13th floor. That night, only one was working. The other had an under repair sign taped to the door. So I waited in front of the one that still worked. I pressed the down button. It came quickly. The doors opened. I stepped in. There was a big mirror on the back wall, like most office elevators have. I caught my reflection for a second. My hair was a mess from sitting at my desk too long. I fixed it up a bit, then pressed the button marked G for the ground floor, where my motorcycle was parked. The doors closed. I heard the elevator start moving. But something felt off. Normally, when an elevator starts going down, you feel that little pull, that brief moment where your body feels lighter. That night, I felt the opposite. My body felt slightly pressed down, the way it does when an elevator goes up. I looked up at the floor indicator above the door. It read 13, then changed to 14. I figured maybe I'd hit the wrong button. I checked the one I'd pressed. The G button was lit up, glowing, which meant it really had registered as selected. But the elevator kept going up. I pressed G again, harder this time. Nothing changed. It kept climbing. The indicator kept ticking. 15, 16, 17. I started pressing other floor buttons, hoping something would respond. Floor 1, floor 5, floor 10. Every button lit up when I pressed it, but the elevator didn't stop at any of them. It just kept going up. The numbers kept changing. 18, 19, 20. 20 was the top floor of that building. I knew that for a fact. I'd been up there a few times for meetings with the board. That's as high as it went. I figured it would stop there. It didn't. The indicator kept changing. 21. I stood there in the elevator, staring at that number, feeling something I can't quite put into words. Not fear exactly, more like a confusion that made my chest feel tight. Because as far as I knew, that building only had 20 floors. There was no floor 21. The number changed again, 22. The lights in the elevator started flickering, not going out completely, just dimming, then brightening, then dimming again, like a candle flame in the wind. I tried the emergency button, the one shaped like a little bell that's supposed to connect straight to building security. I pressed it over and over. No sound came out of the speaker. No response. The indicator stopped changing. But the number on it wasn't one I recognized. It read 0. I stood there staring at that 0 for a few seconds. I tried telling myself it was probably some kind of error code, some technical glitch. Then I heard the chime. That ding sound elevators make when they reach a floor. The doors started opening, slowly. I was hoping to see the usual parking level. White fluorescent lights, painted parking lines, that gasoline smell I dealt with every day. But that's not what was there. What was there was a hallway. Long, pitch black, no end in sight. There wasn't a single light on anywhere in it. The only light came from inside the elevator, lighting up the first few feet of the hallway before the darkness swallowed everything else. What I remember most from that moment isn't the darkness, though. It's the smell. The second the doors opened, I got hit with the smell of wet earth. Strong, like dirt after a heavy rain, mixed with something deeper, something harder to describe, a faint rot underneath it, like wet leaves that had been decomposing on a forest floor for a long time. I stood there in the elevator, completely still. I looked out at that dark hallway. No sound came from it. No footsteps, no wind. Nothing. Just a heavy silence, the kind that makes you aware of your own heartbeat, because there's no other sound around to cover it up. I don't know how long I stood there. Maybe just a few seconds, but it felt a lot longer. What I did next was pure reflex. I hit the close door button, the one with the 2 arrows pointing at each other. The doors started closing, slowly. I pressed it again, over and over, hoping it would speed up. But the doors moved at the exact same pace as always. Like they didn't care how hard I was pressing. I kept my eyes on the dark hallway while I waited for the doors to close. I told myself, just a little longer, and then maybe the elevator would go back down to the real ground floor. The doors were about halfway shut. Then I saw something move at the far end of the hallway. Way off in the deepest part of the dark, something shifted position, like a shadow changing places. I couldn't make out a shape, too dark, too far away. The doors kept closing, the gap getting narrower. Then, right before the doors fully shut, when the gap left was only about 4 inches, I saw something appear from above, from the ceiling of the elevator, right near that closing gap. It was a pair of hands, pale, not just pale, but drained of color entirely, a grayish white. The fingers were long, longer than a person's fingers should be, and they reached down through a small gap above the elevator door, a space where there's usually nothing but the door mechanism. Both hands slipped into the narrowing gap and held it there, pushing the doors, keeping them from closing all the way. I backed up until my spine hit the wall of the elevator. I couldn't scream. My voice just wasn't there. My throat felt dry and locked up. I watched the doors shudder like they were caught in a tug of war between the mechanism trying to close them and whatever was holding them open. That's when my eyes landed on the mirror on the back wall. The same one I'd used to fix my hair before I got in. In the reflection, I saw myself, pressed against the wall, face pale, eyes wide. And then I saw it. Right behind my shoulder, something was standing there, It was about my height, maybe a little taller, shaped like a person, a normal human body, wearing dark clothing, torn in a few places. But where the face should have been, eyes, nose, mouth, there was nothing. Just smooth skin, blank, without a single feature. The figure stood perfectly still, only a few inches from my back. That close. This whole time, from the moment I stepped into the elevator, to seeing that dark hallway, to frantically hitting the door button, it had been standing right there behind me. And I had no idea. I didn't dare turn around and look directly. I could only see it through the mirror, and that alone was enough to freeze my entire body in place. The pale hands were still holding the doors open, forcing them to stay apart. The mechanism groaned louder, like a machine being forced to fight against something holding it back. I didn't know what to do. My body felt locked up, couldn't move, couldn't scream, just watching that reflection, that faceless figure standing silently behind me, while up front, those pale hands kept trying to force a path open toward that dark, earth-smelling hallway. At this point, I have to be honest with you. I don't fully remember what happened next, not in any clear order. What I have are just fragments. I remember the sound of the doors finally closing, somehow. I remember the light inside the elevator suddenly flashing bright, really bright, bright enough that I had to shut my eyes for a second. I remember a wave of nausea hitting my stomach out of nowhere. And I remember opening my eyes again and finding myself already standing on the ground floor, in front of the motorcycle parking lot. The indicator above the door reading G, like nothing had happened at all. I don't know how much time passed between the doors finally closing and me realizing I was on the ground floor. My phone read 12:30. That means only about 30 minutes had passed since I'd gotten in the elevator. But in my memory, whatever happened in that dark hallway felt like it lasted a lot longer than 30 minutes. I walked fast to my motorcycle, not daring to look back once. I rode home that night with my hands shaking on the handlebars, checking my mirrors the whole way, because I felt like something was following me, even though the streets were empty. The next day, I tried to find out more about the building. I asked a few co-workers who'd been there longer than me. One of them, a security guard who'd worked there over 10 years, told me there had actually been a few strange reports about the elevators, especially late at night. He said other employees who'd worked late before had described similar things. An elevator moving on its own, stopping at floors that shouldn't exist. But according to him, most people who went through it never wanted to talk about the details. They just say, try not to work late alone in this building if you can help it, and leave it at that. I also tried digging into the history of the land the building sits on. I'm not going to go into detail in this video because, honestly, I'm not sure how accurate any of it is. But there was one part of what I found that mentioned a missing floor. A floor that was supposedly sealed off on purpose when the building was constructed and never given an official number. I still work at the same office today, but I never work late alone anymore. If I have to stay late, I always find a reason to have a coworker stick around until I leave. And if I ever have to take the elevator alone at night, I make sure I'm facing the doors, never the mirror. Because after that night, I realized something. You never really know who or what is standing behind you until you see its reflection for yourself. And to this day, I still find myself wondering, if the doors hadn't closed in time that night, where exactly that thing would have taken me.